Hi there. Ready for chapter 11? Let's get right into it. Ho! Heinrich shouted to the sky. What a beautiful day! He lifted one arm into the air for pure joy, holding the reins in the other. It was a ridiculous maneuver on a plow, but it was spring, and he was strong, and God was good. Get on, Fluffy! Get on, Fritz! Straight ahead and don't stop till you hit sundown. Uncle Samuel called from behind, where he was pushing corn seeds into the soil and packing them firmly with a broad-ended stick. You need a break? I've just gotten started. In truth, they had been at it since breakfast, and the sun was high in the sky. But Heinrich had an acre of newly turned soil behind him, and it felt good. He had helped with the oats, too. But this was the first time he had plowed on his own. Besides, he got a break every time the animals needed food or water. There was plenty enough for him. The men finished up shortly before supper. While his uncle stowed away the plow and tack, Heinrich threw down new bedding in the oxen stall. Uncle Samuel met him in the front of the barn with a 2-foot length of cordage dangling from his hand. You know anything about this, Heinrich? I've never had rope like this. Heinrich took the cordage and examined it as though it was new to him. It's not hemp. What do you suppose it is? Samuel shook his head. I've never seen it before. It's quite pliable, strong too. He tugged the rope taut between his hands. Could it be Dirk's? I'll have to ask him. I'd like to know where he got it. It's nice stuff. Whew, good thing I'm almost finished. I'll cinch off those last few straps right after supper, and I can give it to him tonight. This is why I've been spending so much time outdoors, Uncle Samuel. You go in first. Samuel took the lantern from his wife and opened the door. He gasped. What? What is it? The rest of the family crowded in to see. Uncle Samuel turned toward Heinrich. His eyes were moist. Saddle packs. You turned Fritz into a pack animal. Will it hold? It'll hold a full barrel of grain per trip, divided between the 2 packs, Heinrich said. I tested it. The cordage can hold more than that, but I'm not as sure about the saddle packs. I could only make a rough loom, so they aren't as strong as they might be. Where did you get the rope? Dirk bobbed up and down. He made it! From silkweed! Uncle Samuel shook his head. Unbelievable. How? Where did you get the idea? Well, I was thinking about your ox cart problem when Dirk and I went hunting, and I couldn't come up with any way to get you some wheels. But when we passed a patch of silkweed along the bank, and I saw this fiber... Amazing. Heinrich patted Dirk on the back. Here's the real culprit. You got suspicious enough of my being out so much, so Dirk took shifts, fetching stalks and stripping them. He even took a few turns on the loom. We'll have to change your name from Groff to Weaver, Aunt Esther said to her son. Dirk stood taller in mock indignation. Groffs are weavers. I still can't believe you made this. Uncle Samuel removed the sack of grain from the saddle pack on Fritz's right side and set it to the ground. Other than a few times when they had to stop and readjust the load, the ox hadn't seemed to notice the unusual weight on its back. What do you think it took us? Heinrich asked. 2 hours? About that. Though we can hardly call it a day's work, just taking a leisurely stroll to town. It's time we find ourselves a buyer. If Uncle Samuel thought the walk to Selfordville was easy, he was going to have to call finding a buyer effortless. They had no sooner set the second bag on the ground than a man approached them and made an excellent offer for their grain. 15 more trips like this and I'll have the whole crop sold. What do you say we go see if anyone has tools for sale? Heinrich hadn't been to the market since last autumn in Germantown, and he found it pleasant to walk around the square. People were selling foodstuffs, livestock, baskets, blankets, and bread, but not a single wheel. Indeed, there wasn't much of anything metal, other than the pewter spoon someone was selling for a ridiculous price. Heinrich chuckled. 50 more like that and you could make a wheel. Or ransom the king. Let's see if the blacksmith has anything for sale. As they headed for the smithy, a small group of militia passed them by. Heinrich mastered his inner revulsion and nodded a polite hello. The smithy was a small place, low, and made of whitewashed stone. The 2 men entered and let their eyes adjust to the dim light. "Mornin'," said the smith, a man not much taller than Uncle Samuel, but with arms as thick as Heinrich's. "How might I serve you?" "We came to inquire if you had such as a set of wheels for sale, or the iron with which to fashion some," said Uncle Samuel. The smith glanced quickly out the door and windows. "Metal's hard to come by these days." "That it is, and mine has all been transported to other places." So goes the tale. As for the smith, he has naught to work with unless someone brings him a bit of steel after dark, or if he's willing to make parts for rifles. Uncle Samuel nodded his understanding. "I didn't realize they were pressuring the smiths so far north." "We don't see the army as much as the militia, but a command's the same regardless of who's holding the gun to your face." Uncle Samuel looked sad. "I had no idea. I won't ask any more. May the good God bless you in this trial." "Thank you, neighbor, and may he bless you in return." "Would they really punish him if he refused to make them guns?" Heinrich asked as they turned back toward the market square. "They've been pretty hard on some of the gunsmiths in Pequea and Lancaster. You've got a Pennsylvania rifle. You know how straight they shoot." "But those guns are for bringing down game." "That may be what they were designed for, but to a man bent on killing another man, a human being is nothing but another type of game." "You think they'll give in? The gunsmiths, I mean?" "A few of the weaker ones already have. Fear will do that to a man. That or the love of money. Pray for your brethren, Heinrich, and pray you don't find yourself in as tight a vice." As Uncle Samuel and Heinrich re-entered the market, they noticed a group of men gathered around the public notice board, seemingly disturbed by a handbill posted there. They stepped up to the back of the crowd and listened. "They can't do that. The assembly's not even approved by the king. It was only a matter of time. It's absurd." Heinrich leaned over to a man who was nodding in agreement. "What's going on?" "The assembly is cutting off our rights is what's going on," the man answered. Heinrich didn't understand. "Whose rights?" "Everyone that won't swear their ridiculous oath of allegiance, as if we would join ourselves with men who rule from the end of a rifle." Uncle Samuel joined the conversation. "Which rights are they cutting? Can't inherit? Can't go to court? Can't hold a fancy job in town? And get this," he shook his head, "they're doubling our taxes. Ha! As if we had money left to pay the first tax." Uncle Samuel and Heinrich drew back. "Can the assembly really do that?" Heinrich asked. "Seems they already have." "But they're not even the legitimate government." Uncle Samuel only shook his head. "Doesn't sound like it'll affect us much one way or the other. Come on, we better get home before the women hear the news from one of the neighbors." As Samuel had predicted, the new penalties had very little effect on the Groffs. They were none of them educators, nor doctors, and they had not the least wish to either hold office or take their grievances to court. Uncle Samuel sold the rest of his grain over the next few weeks, and though they had fewer tools than they would have liked, they had plenty of food, freedom to worship as their conscience demanded, and each other. All told, the war was really quite far away. But mid-May brought some news that made it feel closer. The Continental government issued an edict against 58 men in Germantown for refusing to swear the oath. One was their good friend, the printer of the German Bibles and newspapers they all held so dear, the generous Brethren preacher, Christopher Sauer. We're about to turn into another section of the book where we see Heinrich get back to Germantown, where interesting things are happening with Christopher Sauer and the family he's left back there. So tune in again next week and we'll see Heinrich back in Germantown. Have a good week.